So the chief came up to me and started doing this crazy dance, and he'd actually had a plate of this stuff because his eyes were popping out of his head. And he starts throwing the flame like near my nose and around my face, and I'm just like going, oh no, like is he going to do something now? And then he stops, but he marks some like coal on my body in quite a few different spots. And then he grabbed my hand in front of his face, sniffs up my arm, and then runs off and then dances around like crazy again. He said our fortunes as well of the future and the past. With mine, he said, you do a dangerous sport, but you're going to be number one this year as long as you go to the biggest tree and feed it whatever you're eating and drinking.
Welcome to the Water People Podcast, where we talk story with some of the most adept and interesting water people on the planet. I'm your host, Lauren Hill, joined by my partner, Dave Rastovich. For us, this is a place to exchange not just ideas and practices, but stories, experiential knowledge gleaned from the aquatic adventures that shape us. We acknowledge the Bundjalung Nation, the traditional custodians of the land and waters where we work and play, who have cared for this sea country for tens of thousands of years. Respect and gratitude to all First Nations people, including elders past, present, and emerging. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small. Today, we're in conversation with 1993 world champ Pauline Menczer. Pauline came of age on the then rough streets and rowdy lineup of Bondi Beach, Australia. She started surfing in her early teens, and 4 years later, she won the 1988 World Amateur title. She spent a couple of decades on the World Championship Tour with 21 event wins. Pauline's 1993 world title remains one of surfing's great underdog stories. She was sponsorless and forced to spend almost all of her prize money just to get from contest to contest. Parallel to the financial strain, she struggled with at times debilitating rheumatoid arthritis. Pauline recently penned a memoir called Surf Like a Woman. It is an excellent read and is now available at your local bookstore. And if it isn't, please ask them to order it in. You won't regret it. Here's the blurb from the back of Surf Like a Woman. In the 80s and 90s, surf culture was toxic, especially toward women. But Pauline Menczer, a dirt-poor, chronically ill, freckle-faced teen from Bondi, defied insults and intimidation to ride the waves. The reason? She simply loved to surf. But when Pauline's determination propelled her onto the pro circuit, her battle for acceptance and equality didn't end there. The endemic sexism of the industry meant prize money for women was a pittance, while sponsors ignored her because she was gay and didn't have the beach babe look. Despite these challenges, Pauline became the 1993 world champion and played a key role in bringing greater equality to the sport. Part of her journey is chronicled in the very excellent film Girls Can't Surf. Today, Pauline is an invaluable member of our Northern Rivers community, supporting local social and environmental NGOs. She has a heart of gold and a story that surfing needs right now. We always start by asking about a time or experience after which you were never the same. Do you have a story like that you'd be willing to share with us?
I want to make sure I don't do the same one as last time.
Yeah, that's
I can't
true.
remember what last time's one because I think it was my mum, wasn't it?
It's so different because it was woven in with other people's stories. So you can just say whatever comes up for you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my childhood. A time and a place was for so long I just wanted to be a world amateur champion, and just the journey of how I got there was really hard to get there. And then going to Puerto Rico and finally winning it was amazing. And the crowd that was there was like probably 200,000 people, and it was just insane. Like it was like a festival or something, the way they ran the event. So people would sleep there overnight. And so you imagine like going to this concert. It was like a concert, and you'd turn up for your heat, and to win in front of a crowd like that was just crazy. And at the end they did a celebration. There was the Ramones playing there as well, which I didn't know who they were at that time, but Ben Webber's like, oh man, they're just the best. Yeah, so that was changing because I realised what I really wanted to be was a pro surfer after winning that.
How old were you when that happened?
That was in 1988, so I was 18.
Wow. And you really only had been surfing then for a handful of years, yeah? Like since you were 13, 14?
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a quick progression.
I think too it helped because I was always an ocean baby. Like my mum had us in the water from basically 3 or 4 weeks old. She's like, I had you in the water straight away. So we grew up at Bronte and just hanging there I remember even, I've still got it today. There used to be these old little jackets that not a jacket, but it was just a piece of styrofoam, like a round piece of styrofoam that you put on your back. And I remember all four of us were in those at one point.
So you float face down.
Yeah, I know. And then I looked at it just recently and went, oh my God, like this would just drown kids.
That's so true. Little oversight.
So funny.
Wow.
I love that part of the book. And it made me, like, you're talking about how Budweiser was a sponsor, had these major sponsors. And there must have been an incredible amount of money behind that event. You said the rumors were like $700,000 to put on this amateur surf contest. What are we doing now? Like, what happened?
I don't know, but it was, maybe the companies back then were bigger and had a lot more money to spend on it, but it was insane. Like, we got a police escort we actually stayed all in an army barracks, which was really quite weird, but yeah, it was just crazy. And like, people were drunk. Like I said, it was a festival.
Yeah.
And to make room, so we just parked two cars just a little bit further apart so we could have like 10 surfers just have somewhere where we could sit without everybody else.
Wow.
Because we're trying to like get ready for our heats, and it was just that crowded that you didn't even have a stretch area.
Wild.
Yeah. In the book, I love how you talk about seeing the Ramones, how you had mostly been listening to Madonna up to that point, but there was this band, the Ramones, and they were singing, I want to be sedated, and you're this young, drunk, stoked young surfer, and you realize that you don't want to be desensitized at all. You can't relate to that message. You actually want to feel all of it. You want to experience all of this with these wild bunch of surfers that you're surrounded by. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was crazy. And it's funny, because doing this book was like, I just had so many tears, so much laughter. It was just incredible to like I just completely forget about some things. And then Luke Benedictus really helped he would just, like, I'd tell him a story and then he would say, do you have a couple of contacts? And so I'd give him some contact numbers, and then he would talk to Ben Weber, and like Ben filled in so many stories where I'm like going, oh my God, did we do that? Oh, I don't know if that bit should be in the book. And then even after Luke had put the whole book together and it just sort of arrives and you've got to start reading through it, I was just cracking up laughing, just going, I can't believe that's right, I remember that story. And so, we all remember different things, but it was just so awesome to relive it. And I had to go through like probably about 40 boxes of photos and 25 albums of photos just to try and help my memory as well.
Yeah, for sure, especially because of the pace. Like, just the amount of events and the amount of moving around and everything is just incredible. Going back to that event, though, in Puerto Rico, the reason it sticks out for you, like, obviously, winning is an experience that's amazing for everyone. We all love to win something. But what else was it?
I think it was the first win, too, and just being up on stage with all those people and just thinking, wow, is this what it's like? Like, you get to do something you love and you get people to enjoy it that much. So that respond of the crowd, and even they're screaming coming out of the water. So I actually thought that every pro event would be like this one.
Oh, wow.
And still to this day, that was the biggest.
Yeah, wow.
But I still always thought that, like, this is amazing, this lifestyle, and to get recognition, because I had such a struggle that I thought as soon as I turned professional, because of that event, I thought it was going to be like amazing and we're going to earn millions and be on TV and all this kind of stuff. I was just like going, oh, wow, I've just lived my wildest dream. Yeah. So I came back from that event going, okay, well, I was going to finish year 11 and 12, but maybe I should just turn professional now.
Amazing. Wow.
And how were your expectations met once you did decide not to continue school, but to get on the pro tour?
So it took only about 3 or 4 events to realise I was looking at the checks of the women on stage and the guys on stage, and I'm like, what? Why is it so different? I was blown away. I honestly didn't know there was a difference in prize money. And then when I started travelling and we would get to places like France, I'd see all these guys just rocking up right at the beachfront, going straight to their nice hotels, and I'm like, what? Hang on a minute, like, why are we struggling to stay there? And I'm like, thinking, okay, so they got the sponsors, they got the extra prize money. And then I realised just how much of a struggle it was, because I thought I was just trying to save money, but one time this lady in France let us all stay at her house. I think there was about 12 of us all together. She cleared out one room, and then we were all just in a lounge room. She just moved the dining table, and then there was some of us in this loft. So it was crazy. So we were all staying there to save money, and it wasn't just, it was, like 12, it was nearly the whole women's tour back then.
Yeah.
I really was excited to chat with you about this, Pauline, because I feel like you haven't been recognized for the important contributions you made personally to getting surfing up to this point of competitive pay parity. It's one of the problems with women's surfing in general, I think, that there hasn't been a place for the history to live in the media, in the magazines, in the films, because it's been pretty much overlooked from all of those angles. Each generation of female surfers feel like they're pioneering or reinventing the same conversations. But this conversation around pay equality was happening in the 70s with WISA, the Women's International Surfing Association, with Jericho Poplar and Mary Sederholm. It was happening in your generation, and I want to talk about some of the numbers in particular. And then it was happening for the big wave women who are pushing the California Coastal Commission to try to give them not just equal prize money, but even a shot to surf at big waves. And they ultimately forced the hand of the WSL to award equal prize money because of legalities in California. So the WSL really took credit for that ultimate win. But when you look at the history, it was women like you who sat down on the beach and you protested your heats for being sent out in shitty conditions, even though you'd paid the same amount of money to get to these contests. You paid the same amount of money to stay in these far-flung locations. You were having to pay for the equipment just like men were, and were earning a fraction of the amount of money. In 1988, you wrote, total prize money for male surfers, about 1.2 million, and there was 150,000 available in prize purse for female surfers. That's 13% of the men's prize money. What about the OP Pro? Oh my gosh, that story, so infuriating. In the late 80s, the total prize money at the Huntington Beach OP Pro was $70,000. 65,000 went to the men's prize purse. And then how about 1987 OP Pro? You write about in the book when the contest organizers suddenly decided they were going to scrap the women's division altogether to flow extra cash over to the men's side of things, but they were going to keep the bikini contest, whose prize purse was $15,000, the same amount of prize money that the female surfers would have gotten or had to scrap over, basically, while the men were going to earn around $80K for that same contest. What did that say to you? What did you learn from the way decisions were made in the surf industry at that point? Because there's this argument that, and I've faced it through my time in the surf industry too, that I've been told repeatedly, there's not enough women, no one wants to watch women surfing, the audience isn't big enough, it's just a business decision. Yes. It's all numbers. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I found is there was, it was quite very male chauvinistic, and you would have, say, 95% of the guys like that and 5% that weren't. And we're really lucky and blessed that we had the 5%. And someone like Graham Cassidy, he was really good. He was always for the women. And the guys, for instance, when there was a lot of trouble with money, that the economy was busting up, and the guys, instead of realising that we're bringing other sponsors to the events, kept thinking that we're taking theirs. And so it was all like me. And like, no, the women don't deserve that. Why should we have them here? This is our tour. So it was really like they never felt like we were part of it. We were always just interrupting their tour. And so what I feel like is, I personally think as those chauvinistic males are slowly dying off, it's getting better and better and better. There's still some around, and, I know that even within the WSL, there's some really amazing people, and there's some people that are still stubborn as well. Because I was talking to one of the people in there, and I said, why isn't it the same amount of women as men now? And she's like, yeah, tell me about it. Like, it needs to change. And so there's still that struggle even now today. Yeah. And I'm hoping that, we've already shown what we can do. The sponsors are there. There's way enough girl surfers that are young girl surfers and women out there that are ripping. So there's absolutely no reason to not make it equal amount of men and women on the tour. And that's something I'm still pushing for. I'm still always, every time I see a post on Instagram, I'm always saying a little comment like, why aren't the same amount of women as men? And yeah, like when I was on tour, it was ridiculous because I remember, when that South Africa event happened, that was not the first time I tried. I actually tried a few times to get people just to stay sitting on the beach. And then what would happen is they'll sit there and they really wanted to do it. And then all of a sudden, like Roxy will come up from the corner and say, "You're one of our surfers. If you don't paddle out, we're going to drop you." And so the girls had this pressure on them that they had no choice. They're just like, "I've got to go out." Or the contest director will, like I remember even in France, there was another girl and the contest director just really hassled her. And so she went out. But once we finally united together and had our representative, they couldn't do that anymore. So that they would go, "Hang on a minute, I can't answer you. I've got to go see the girls." And then so
yeah, it was like unionizing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think it was around that time where we didn't paddle out that's when we all realised, we've got some power here, and we didn't get fined.
But you had to take it. It was never given to you, that power. You really had to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like that moment that Pam, we all had representatives in there, and that time that they just went, they didn't even give us any heads up. Just Pam went into the meeting and they basically just said, "We don't want any women's representatives." So she was just like, "What the hell?" And then all these surfers that she's known all her life, she couldn't believe that they voted the women out as well. So yeah, that was devastating for all of us. We all actually felt like Pam said she wanted to sue them, but we just felt like all walking away. We're just so angry.
Yeah. And that would have been winning for them, really, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
For the male surfers trying to push you out. What I love about your book is you get a real sense for the difference it would have made in your life to have had a little bit of financial security. Can you talk about what difference equal pay would have made for you as a traveling professional athlete?
Well, for me, I think without a doubt I would have won a lot more world titles. I spent so much time worrying about what kind of money I can have, and then even with my health, I was always trying to fix my health on a budget, and so I couldn't go and get the massages I needed or get the special powders and eating really well. Everything was done on a budget, absolutely everything. And so
mushrooms and bread rolls.
Yeah, I know, that was Tony Sawyer's trick. She's like, that's what you need to eat if you're on a budget, so you're still getting some nutrients from your mushrooms and then some bread.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty crazy. And people do say, "I bet you wish you were there now." And I'm like, no, I really loved when I was there and still loved it, but I just am curious to just know how many world titles I would have won with the support.
Yeah, totally.
Because pretty much everyone else that has ever won more than one world title, they're all been supported. And so to even win one without the support was pretty crazy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like going through the book and seeing how much was going on outside of just the water time that you were having, and that you had some pivotal people come in to your life that were really crucial to get you to your title and to get you surfing at your best. And I was wondering if you could just mention Vic and then Steve.
Yeah.
And what kind of role they played in your life.
Yes, I was really lucky. The two people that coached me through my whole career, one was Victor Ford from the Bondi Junction Surf Shop, and he also had the Bondi Beach Surf Shop. And I met him I was riding a Cool Light surfboard, and I was starting to get quite good on the Cool Light surfboard.
Which is not easy, I don't reckon.
I know, especially the ones back then. And then my best friend had a fiberglass board, and I had a go of hers, and that made me really want to get a fiberglass board. So I ended up going to the local surf shop and finding a board that I loved, and I only had $20. It was a second-hand board, and he said, "That one's $40." And then I went back outside and I was chatting to my brother, just all nervous, going, "Oh no, I really want that board, but it's way more than I've got." And he goes, "Just ask him for it for $20. And I'm like, "Yeah, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, just do." So I go back in and say, "Could I have it for 20?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I've seen you surfing. I see you're so committed already and you're always out there." And he said, "I'd love to give it to you for $20. And so then after he gave it to me, every time I was surfing, he'd always just give me a hand with my style and tell me where to put my arms and where to push with my feet, and really worked a lot on style. And then after a time, he invited me to go up to Crescent Head for the first time. And then when I went to Crescent Head, he didn't know I had bad arthritis, but unfortunately it just flared up really bad while I was in the middle of this trip. And then he asked me what I ate because he was right into all this nutrition and stuff. And I told him, and he was blown away that I was eating so much crap.
Yeah, what was it? What were you eating?
Just everything, just, chocolate, ice cream. I had quite a wealthy friend at school, Rebecca Page, and like her dad was quite wealthy. They had an account at a local shop, and she'd go, just chuck that away, we'll get what we want. And so I remember my mum even she opened my bag one day and found like 7 sandwiches in there. Or 7 sandwiches in there, and she goes, "What are all these sandwiches?" And she's like looked at them carefully. She goes, "It's all your lunch." And I go, "Yeah, well, my grandmother made salami sandwiches. They're gross." And she goes, "Yeah, but you need to eat something. What have you been eating for lunch?" I'm like, "Oh, Rebecca's been buying me lunch." She goes, "What's she been buying you?" I'm like, "Oh, burger rings and Tim Tams and Redskins." And so he started to teach me about eating better, and so. I ended up moving from Sydney to Byron Bay, and what happened there was I ended up starting to get coached by Steve Foreman, because the very first year I went on tour, actually before the first year I went on tour, Jenny Gill had this coach, Steve Foreman, and she said, "Oh, you should come up. He's a really cool guy. He coaches the girls for free, and you might learn something from him." So I came up, and we all stayed at his house and just had the best time and just loved it, because I'm like, what are we doing in the city? This is just amazing living up here. So I said to my mum, I think her partner passed away a couple of years later. I said to Mum, you should come up to Byron, like it's amazing. So I brought her up here on a trip and spoiled her rotten, and she just fell in love with it up here. And then not long after ended up moving here. And so it was great for me to be closer to Steve and be coached by him. But he was just amazing. Like, he put so many hours into not just myself, but lots of other, like even Woody and Lane Beachley, Trudy Todd, Kylie Webb. Like, there was so many surfers that he just put all his time into us for free because he knew that we didn't have the money. So it was actually nice. Just the other weekend, I ended up nominating him for the Surfing Australia Awards. So I was so stoked he got nominated after all these years. He's put 45 years into coaching kids for free.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so it's nice to see him get his awards.
Yeah. So the first time I saw you and Steve, I was probably like 11 years old down at Broken, and so it would have been like 91, 92, that sort of period. I think when I was reading your book, it just brought these flashbacks to me, and I actually remember being on the beach at Broken and my dad pointing out the two of you.
Classic.
And you were doing some sort of like, you would go out, catch a couple of waves, and then kind of come back in. He'd be standing sort of right on the waterline and talking all animated and stuff. And then you'd go back out and you'd come back in, and you'd go back, and my dad would be like, "Look, Davo, they're training really hard." And he just had huge respect for you because he knew your story, my dad. And he's like, "And look at that guy, man. He is just, look, he's so into it. Look at him." And anyway, that was just my first glimpse of the two of you. And then I have, throughout the years, saw you around Brums and different areas around here with Steve, and it always just seemed like a really amazing dynamic. Like you see these days people who have a paid coach, or they have a high performance center and stuff, that you do something with someone for a little while and then you move on or whatever. But it was almost, he looked like, an uncle kind of role or a fatherly kind of figure.
Yeah, it was much more than a coach, because I didn't have a father, and so my whole life without a father was quite bizarre. And then Steve was the first kind of real father figure that I felt I had, and he was great. Like, you could talk to him about anything. And then we went fishing together. At one point we were fishing together way more than we were surfing together. Every time the surf's crap, let's go fishing. So he was just awesome. And I also, every time I came up, I didn't live up here for a few years first, and every time I came up, I was staying in his yard. And at the time when I won the world title, I was actually with my girlfriend, who was, to the rest of the world, my coach. We were both staying in their backyard, and so all I do is some gardening in exchange for living in the van in their backyard. And even just the whole family, I just totally grew up with their family, with the kids, and it's quite weird to see, Nicole was... I remember when Nicole was really little, she was putting my hair up and, giving me ponytails and stuff like that, and didn't seem like that long ago, such a long time. But next thing you know, her daughter's doing the same thing, But it's just weird that all that time just flies.
Yeah. Oh, so great. Well, I'm stoked we get to acknowledge Steve, and yeah, he's an amazing man. And
it's going to be a big surprise when he sees the comment in the beginning of the book, because he doesn't know it's dedicated to him.
Oh, nice.
Keep that as a surprise.
Yeah. Pauline, you write, Quote, "Of all the ways I imagined that Pipeline could beat me, I didn't think the deal breaker would be the fact that I'm a girl." Can you talk us through paddling out at Pipe for the first time?
Yeah, so I went to Pipeline right after the World Amateur titles in 88. Me and three of the other competitors at the World Masters, Simon Farrow, I think it was Damien Iredale, Ben Webber, we all went to Hawaii and we stayed right in front of Rocky Point in the house right there. And we just thought, you know, we need to come and learn to surf big waves. And unfortunately, I was having quite a few issues with my arthritis because not only it's an emotional disease. And so even when you're really happy, it can trigger it. So, of course, winning the world title, the world amateur title,
wow, yeah,
it sort of made it come on again as well. So I was having some days I was out there and sometimes I wasn't. Anyway, Ben and that had gone surfing beforehand, and Ben said that he went and surfed log cabins and this guy chased him in and he was raving on about it and I wasn't really listening. Anyway, then I went for a surf and the guys just warned me, just be careful of the locals, like, you know, show respect, whatever. So I did. I went out to Pipe. Thought finally I'm, you know, well enough and gutsy enough to have a go. And it was only a small day, maybe 4 or 5 foot, something like that. And I don't even think I caught a wave yet. And this guy's come up to me and goes, "What are you doing out here? Like, you need to go in." And I went, "What? Why?" And he goes, "No girls out here." And so he just started kicking and as he kicked me, I was really lucky another guy yelled out to like basically leave me alone or let her get away. And so thanks to him, I think I didn't get really beaten up. So I just came in and I was like so scared. So I didn't surf Pipe again after that. I just thought, and he was one of the black shorts back then. I don't know if that still goes on in Hawaii now because I haven't been there for a long time. But back then they were very protective of their breaks. And so I don't think it happened just because I was a girl. I think it was more just any sort of visitors. But yeah, that was sort of like the last thing I expected was that, you know.
Yeah. Getting kicked in the guts.
Getting kicked in the guts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think at that time, too, I actually, like at Bondi, it happened to me later. So that was actually the first time ever that I had that aggression. So it was really intimidating. I was tiny. I was so little. Like, even though I was 18 at the time, I was probably more like a 15-year-old and a little 15-year-old.
Yep.
There are a few moments in the book when you reference the kind of sexual aggression or assault, these undertones in the surf culture that you experience. I suspect that it's really common. Just statistically, we know that 1 in 3 women experience sexual assault in our lifetime, but we never really talk about it in the context of surfing. But did you see that as a common theme through your time?
I did. You know, it was really horrible because I looked like a little boy in the surf. They didn't know there was a little boy sitting behind them, and some of the stories I heard, graphic details about raping girls.
And bleeding. You write about that in the book. Yeah.
And I was like absolutely mortified. And it was one of the well-known surfers down there and I just couldn't believe what he was saying. And so I kind of think that's where I sort of never knew what my sexuality was till a lot later, but I was always scared of guys. And so I heard that story in the surf. And then I'd go out to nightclubs. You know, I was already 18 by then, but I still wasn't sexually active at that age. And you'd be dancing, and next thing you know, the guys got their hand down your pants and just having a good fiddle and basically grabbing you back to their hotel or their house.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you how many times I went out just to go for a dance and I had to run out and get a cab. And I'd always just say I'm going to the toilet and then just run off. And it was never like gentle or soft. It was always just like, you're mine tonight. And they would treat you like they're already in the bedroom all hot and ready to go. And that's how they would treat you on the dance floor. And I was just like blown away.
I've spoken about some similar experiences that I've had to guys in surf media recently, and they're so surprised by it because they don't see it, because they don't have to. And for me, it's just the logical endpoint of when we have a media that objectifies women and portrays women as hypersexual beings, like the only woman I grew up seeing in a men's surfing magazine, the real surf magazine, Surfer magazine, was a particular type of beautiful woman in a G-string or some other version of a hiked up bikini and lots of skin showing. Like, that teaches you to think about women as an object. And so it makes sense that those men are going to treat women like objects. And it's super unhealthy for everyone.
Yeah, like even when I was younger, I can't tell you how many times, like I was riding my skateboard down the beach and like there really was guys wanking in the bush. Like as soon as they see a little girl walking past, they'd just stand there and show you everything. And it was like that, like everywhere you walk sort of thing. And I'll never forget going down my street. It was just getting dark And this guy tries to grab my friends, and he's in the nude, and he's trying to grab him. I'm lucky, like I was a little terror. You don't mess with me.
Yeah.
So I like pushed my friend away and just kicked him straight in the nuts, and he just fell over, and I was just like, yeah, we'll get rid of him. But that's how you had to be.
Yeah.
Like, you had to be really street smart. Like, you know, as a kid, you sneak out and you do things like, we did go sneak out to King's Cross, and we're walking through the forest with our sticks. We were kind of like going, come on, we're waiting. Because it's just like that happened.
Yeah.
So you're just like, we're ready for you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's Scum Valley too, you know,
Yeah.
like that's that era. And I pick up from the book that where you grew up and how your family's experiences really shaped that tough side of you, and then the ability to be traveling the world on a shoestring and just making shit work while winning events and succeeding on top of that, not just existing, but then thriving through your surfing. When you think of your family line, so not just that the location of where you grew up, the tough, hard knocks of, you know, the city on the beach at Bondi, but actually what your mum and your mum's mum went through before
Totally.
they arrived in Sydney, and when they arrived in Sydney, and how they survived, like coming to this foreign country and just making shit work.
Totally. So there's something that sticks by me, and it's written in the book, but I want it to like really get in people's heads. There's a positive in every negative.
Yeah.
And so if you look at, you know, like for instance, Steve used to say it as well, oh, you know, like you lost that heat and you should have won it. Like you absolutely should have won it. But the negative is, yeah, you shouldn't have lost it, but it just means you just got to win by a lot. And then it made me like a better surfer, a better competitor. And same growing up, like, you know, I saw my grandmother used to do things like saving rotten apples in her room and milk to make cheese, and I went to throw this rotten apple out, and she goes, what are you doing? And I go, just throwing this rotten apple out. And she goes, it's a delicacy where I come from. And so when I found out later more of what they went through, like they had to leave, they were from Vienna, but we had a Jewish background, so they had to get out because of the Nazis. So my great-grandmother and grandmother ended up in the Isle of Wight, and then after they were there, they realised it wasn't safe, so they ended up in Shanghai. And then my grandmother met a man in Shanghai, had my mother, and that didn't work out. And when my mum was 5, my great-grandmother, grandmother, and my mother came to Australia on a boat. And so, you know, they came from having nothing. And then my grandmother remarried in Australia. It's quite funny because for years I always thought that guy she married was my grandfather the whole time growing up. And it wasn't until I was 35 or 40 or something that my girlfriend at the time kept calling me her little Shanghai girl. And I go, why do you keep calling me your little Shanghai girl? And I go, she said, because you look Asian. I said, oh, do I? No one's ever said that before. She goes, yeah, you totally look Asian. And then a month later, someone said to me that my teeth are Asian. So when you have the curved teeth this way, that's normally
wow.
Asian teeth. And same with those little ridges. A lot of Asians' teeth have that. So then I asked my mum, and then she goes, oh, that's not your real grandfather.
Well, thanks for telling me, Mum.
And
yeah,
I'm like,
nice.
really? Who is then? I'm like, what? And then I found out many years later that my grandmother actually remarried again and again and again. So many times. And there was like a lot of secrets of so many things that my grandmother said, you'll find out when I die. And so one of the things I found out when she died was that she was married about 6 or 7 times.
Wow. So you didn't come from a line of deep communicators, it sounds like.
No.
They didn't open up and
Not
communicate
at all.
much.
So we talked about the here and now in my family.
Yeah.
Never, just, and I don't know if it was just because they didn't want to or it was just the way we were brought up. So even now I struggle to, when I meet people, I always like let them talk. I don't actually go, oh, and what about this and what about that? And so as I've gotten older, I've learnt to do that. But yeah, and so when I was 5, my twin brother was 5, and I had 2 older 8-year-old brothers. My father was killed, and what had happened was, so this is a little bit of controversy within our family, but basically my grandfather owned a milk run. And when he was doing the milk run, he got hit and killed while he was doing the milk run. And then I'm not sure of the time frame, whether it was months or a year. My dad was in his taxi and he got killed in the taxi. And it was, my mum reckons that they were both just accidents, like my grandfather crossing the road just happened to get hit and killed. But where my dad got killed, just doesn't seem like that would happen. His money wasn't gone. And then they're like, oh, maybe it was a suicide or whatever. But My godfather reckons that the mafia wanted to buy the milk run at the time, and they didn't want to sell, so they just like got rid of them.
Yep.
Wow.
So we don't really know the true story, and that was just mum's like no, and then my godfathers are like, yeah, that's what we think. So I never looked into it. I thought they're gone. It doesn't make any difference to me. It still kind of shows you that era that we were brought up in. And then so my mum, so because my grandfather was killed first, my dad had actually invited my mum's mum to live with us. And then when he died, so there my mum's got not only 4 kids, now she's got her mum living with her. And that was really tough for my mum because my grandmother helped a little bit, but my mum was also basically her secretary because my grandmother worked as a chiropodist. So doing, I think there's a new name for it now, doing people's nails. What's the name for it now?
Don't look at me. I have no idea. Have you
Forget
seen
what
my
it's called
feet?
now,
I've got-
but
Nail technician? No, I don't know. I'm not sure.
they're dealing more with older people who can't reach their feet, basically.
Okay, yeah.
And so, yeah, my mum's left with all of us. And so she had to really learn to save every cent. And so the first thing that we did was we would always go street cleanups. Mm-hmm. And so she would put an older brother and a younger one on one side and me and an older brother on the other side. And we'd just, just get whatever we could off the street, get whatever we could off the beach, cans and everything. And so we basically survived from doing that. And I'm so thankful for it because the only reason I stayed on tour as long as I did is I still kept just being a wheeler and dealer. And even still today, it's so ingrained in me. Like I went to the contest and they gave me a couple of things. And I'm like, oh, do you think I could get an extra shirt for my mate Andy? So I'm still doing it. Like I just can't change. I think even if I won 10 million, I'd still probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I loved in the book when your brother was saying, leave the sand in the Coke can when you crunch it up and take it to get recycling money, and because that's how you got your $20 for your first fiberglass board.
Totally,
is doing that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Which was funny because even still today, I do get the guilt about things like that. Like I don't like doing things the wrong way, but then you got to survive, So I'm
Totally.
like, I just got to survive.
Yeah, leave the sand in there.
What was the strangest thing that you bought and sold to raise funds to pay for your travel on the tour?
The strangest things.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think the oddest to carry was, I don't know if you remember those bikes that you had. There was a really long bike. So you kind of like stretch your legs out.
Yeah.
So that would be my weirdest because I also had to travel with it. So not only did I have all my boards in my suitcase, I ended up traveling to Europe with it. But the only reason I did it is I already knew that Qantas Airlines let you have 2 bags from America that were 35 kilos each. So what I did is I put all my clothes in my surfboard bag and then I brought the box. And I knew that in France, because the guy gave me a really good discount. I paid $200 and I think I sold it for something like $2,000.
Wow.
So
Nice.
that was the best one. And then I would do things like even going to the contest area and getting so many, like we laughed one time, I think we got 300 cans of drink. We just every single day I'd just walk out there with the biggest bag and I'm like, stuff them. They're making so much money out of us surfers and we're not getting anything. I'm just going to take my... And so I'd pay for my accommodation with the friends I'd stay with so that I couldn't give them money. But every time I stayed with anyone like that, they would get that. And she even laughed because I was there like even maybe 2 years later and she still had cans of drink. So sometimes I felt like Robin Hood in a way, like steal from the rich and give to the poor.
totally,
And that's what I always felt like. I'm like, bugger you guys.
Yeah.
You give the girls crap, I'll take what I can.
Yeah, I loved the camaraderie there that you all had. I was mentioning to Lauren that my first time I went to Europe to do WQS and junior events, I went and rocked up at Bordeaux, I think it was. I had no phone. There was no phones then anyway, but no phone, no emails or anything. I had no plan. I had nowhere to stay, no car, just nothing. I just rocked up there and I was luckily on a flight with a few other surfers, but there was a pack of ladies there for the events. And I think it was like Kate Garrett
yeah.
and Prue Jeffries and maybe Sam Cornish and... I can't remember who else, but anyway,
They put you in the car and took you there.
Yes.
Yeah, and we always did that.
It was the best.
Yeah.
I was so stoked, and I always felt like a bit of an outsider around the real chest beating, macho, LMB scene, and all that bullshit with just hard drinking and with most of the dudes. I just didn't feel that comfortable. But then I was in this car, and there was just just this really great solidarity that I felt.
It was totally like that.
It was really
and
cool.
without each other, like we did go hardcore in the water and there was no friends in the water, but the camaraderie we had was awesome.
Yeah.
And we really were friends. Like there would be some that you didn't quite click with, but you wouldn't stay with them. Yeah. But the ones you stayed with was just awesome.
Yeah, and that for me it was interesting because I had that experience, and then I only really did the contest thing for a couple of years, but a little while later I had enough sponsorship to be able to, get a taxi and go to a hotel, and it was fucking lonely. And it was like, I got a bit of support, like I had enough money to get a hotel and the ticket to the next contest, and that was about it, but it was enough to feel really lonely. And
so getting to that loneliness, I did see, even when some of the girls started to get sponsored, I'd be just that little bit jealous, like going, oh, they just got it so much easier, haven't they? And I'm like, I don't get it. Like I've won so much just because they got blonde bloody hair. They're getting all the finances. But then, I stayed a couple of times in a hotel, just like you said, by myself. And it was horrible. I was like, this sucks. Absolutely sucks. And so again, turning a positive into a negative.
What did you do?
A positive out of a negative is that's why I started staying with families.
Yeah. Oh, great.
And so like people would always go, there's something that sits in my mind and I just cannot get rid of it out of my mind, of sitting on the beach in France and it was flat as a tack and we're in Biarritz and it was gorgeous, like beautiful day that, and you know what the view's like with all those old houses and just gorgeous. And quite a few of the Hawaiian girls were sitting there and an Aussie girl and they're just going, we just want to go home. And I went, are you serious? Like, this is our office. Look around. Why do you want to go home? And then it made me realise that I think because I had it tough, I really loved what I did. I loved every minute of it. And because they had everything and they were bored, there's just no waves. I just didn't know what to do with themselves. I just wanted to go home. And so again, you've got something that you just, I don't know, you just learn to love it more. You're there for the right reason.
Yeah, big time.
It makes me wonder about surfers on tour now. How
it's so different now. I can't tell you how happy I was when I heard Katie say pipes for the fucking girls, because I just felt like everyone is like machines on tour now. Like they're all got the same personality. You just see them all doing their gym work, and because of Insta, like no one's allowed to be themselves. We did lots of crazy things, but it was just all fun and it was just a bit of, just human nature. And now it's
and
like...
it was interesting.
Because
you were real people.
It was interesting. And now it's like, you know what the next post is going to be. You go, okay, now they're going to do this post. Now they're going to do that post. And I even asked them, like, do you guys like not carry phones to parties or does like nothing happen anymore sort of thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was just so stoked to hear Katie's just speak her mind. It was great.
Please stay tuned while we take a quick break to acknowledge the folks who help make our podcast possible. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small, right from the heart of Byron Bay. Stone and Wood isn't just about brewing beer, it's about building a community. Certified B Corp and driven by environmental and social responsibility, they're all about making a positive impact one sip at a time. Their philanthropic arm, the Ingrained Foundation, supports local grassroots organizations, channeling funds and volunteer hours straight into the communities they call home, focusing on environmental and social causes close to the heart. Here's to Stone and Wood for crafting exceptional brews and for making a tangible difference in our Northern Rivers community. Patagonia is in business to save our home planet. Founded by Yvonne Chenard in 1973, Patagonia is a surf and outdoor apparel company based in Ventura, California. As a certified B Corp and a founding member of 1% for the Planet, the company is recognized internationally for its product quality and environmental activism, as well as its contributions of nearly $230 million to environmental organizations. Patagonia's unique ownership structure reflects that Earth is its only shareholder. Profits not reinvested back into the business are paid as dividends to protect the planet. Futures makes the first surf fins from recycled fishing nets. Alpha Net Plus is an innovative collaboration between Futures Fins and Borreo, blending carbon and discarded fishing nets. To date, they've transformed more than 35,000 kilos, that's about 77,000 pounds, of discarded fishing nets into new alpha fins at their headquarters in Huntington Beach, California. Nets that would have otherwise ended up in the ocean. Made for high performance and tested by the best, from our very own Dave Rastovich to friend of the podcast, John Florence, Alpha is available in a wide range of fins for those who want to make a difference with every wave you catch. Learn more at futuresfins.com. The best summer surf seasons go hand in hand with fried eyeballs. Looking perpetually red-eyed might be an indicator of good times, but it also hurts. Good sunnies are non-negotiable, but ours inevitably get jumbled in the beach bag and the lenses get shredded by sand. Child, that's C-H-I-L-D-E, Eco Eyewear reimagines the way we use sunglasses. Instead of tossing out frames because of scratched lenses, the Child for Life program offers free lens replacement up to 12 months from purchase and for a small fee thereafter. Child makes sunnies and prescription glasses from plants, not petrol. It's eyewear that's made to last and able to be repaired for a smaller energy footprint. Let's reimagine the culture of disposability together. Learn more at childeyewear.com. Pauline, I was so grateful to read how vulnerably you wrote about your early sexual experiences and how clear it was for you that having sex with men was not for you. Mm-hmm. That is just a story that hasn't been openly told in surfing, hasn't probably been allowed to have been told yet. You, like many surfers, felt that you needed to hide your sexual orientation for fear of who knows what. I mean, violence at the worst, or just not being supported at the least, or being
losing
judged
your sponsor.
unfairly. Yeah. But I loved how you wrote so sweetly about your girlfriend at the time, who was, like you said before, traveling under the guise of being your coach. But you write about how, like a coach, you discovered who you really were under her guidance. That was so beautiful. And then later, when you're celebrating your world title, you write about how you really owed that win to her because of her support. And I thought, wow, I've never read another athlete, but definitely not a male athlete, attribute their personal athletic win to someone outside of themselves.
I think there's two reasons, though, not only as a person what she did for me, but because of what I went through to win. So to win the world title, I was an absolute mess with my body, and every day she would massage me, every day. And she would, in Hawaii, she'd have to pick me up and put me in the shopping trolley to walk around the supermarket to make sure I got the right food. And anyone else, I feel like would have walked away from someone who's just like crippled like that. And I probably wasn't real fun to be around either. And so, I feel most people who have won a world title have had someone with them. And I guess they do say their little speech, but it is like at the background. But I think you do win a world title as a team. You really do. And it was important to mention her for sure.
And this cannot be understated. You didn't surf for a full month before winning your world title. That's unbelievable. And not because you were resting and training and wanted to do something besides being in the water. You were completely debilitated by your arthritis.
It was terrible. It was crazy too. Like when the lead up to Hawaii, just trying to get my body to move even a little bit. Just to show you how bad I was. Like if you were to get up out of bed, you imagine that you can't move your elbows or your wrists and your ankles really hurt. Think about straight away how you're going to actually get up. So I actually had to turn on my stomach and then lean back till my feet touch the ground and then carefully stand up because my ankles were like razor blades. Basically, every joint was like razor blades. So even if you barely touched it, it would hurt so much. It's kind of like getting your hand slammed in a car door or having a sprained ankle and then trying to walk around on sprained ankles. And so Steve's like going, there's no way. In his head, there's no way she's going to Hawaii. Like she can't even bloody walk, let alone go to Hawaii. And because I wasn't getting any better here and I was stressing to the lead up to Hawaii, I decided to go there early. And I was so happy that I ran into Rochelle Ballard because she talked about this guy that could put my body in time. And so he did this kind of guru stuff where he touched my leg in one spot and my shoulder in another spot and said he was putting my body in time. And I was thinking, oh, God, like Rochelle's sent me to see this guy and he's just a tripper. But I was pleasantly surprised from walking really crippled in there. I was walking probably 25% better. And that 25% better was, amazing just to be able to surf, but I was still nowhere near where I should be. And I was absolutely shitting myself the whole lead up in Hawaii. So I was basically just putting my leg rope around where you walk into the pool, you got the pool handle there. I was putting my leg rope on that and paddling just to try and keep my paddle strength up. And then Jodie came a little bit later and she was staying with us. And then she would see Nadej massaging me each night, but she didn't really say anything. And then one day she goes, "Why aren't you surfing?" I said, "Because I can't." She goes, "What? You can't surf?" And I said, "No, haven't you noticed how crippled I am?" And she goes, "Yeah, I can see you're sore, but you're quite often." So I'm like, I'm really sore. So I actually didn't surf at all before my heat. When I surfed the contest, that was my first day out there. And because I was so scared and it was pretty big, I ended up being lucky that the girl I went to the World Amateur titles with that got second there, Kim Briones, is a local Hawaiian surfer, and she had a 7.8 that I could borrow, so I ended up using that. And still, it was funny because I even couldn't believe myself, like how bad I was and like how hard it was to get up, trying to get up on your knuckles because it was too hard to bend my wrists. I couldn't believe that I could turn it, and I seriously just was surfing like fine.
Wow.
Can we recap? So, haven't surfed in 4 weeks, on a borrowed board, never ridden it before, cannot bend your wrists, and you win the world title.
Yeah, and so my elbows were stuck like that as well. So I couldn't even brush my hair. Like, you imagine, like, see if you can't turn your wrists. Even going to the toilet was a nightmare. I had to basically have a shower after I did a number 2 because you couldn't even wipe your own bottom. Like, it was a nightmare.
And so I remember one time when you were talking story about that moment. So you're going down the sand, which is hard to walk in at the best of times. That Hawaiian sand sinks you deep and you got to use all your muscles in it. And then you got to deal with the freaking Sunset Beach shore break.
Oh, it was just
which is intense.
Crazy.
So, and you're in that state. So what happens when you put the wet shirt on for the heat and then you put the board under your arm and you run down? Like, what is the transition between that pain and all of that and till that point where you take off and you surf away?
So the pain was still insane and the nervousness was insane. It was kind of like you've been in a car accident and that just fight or flight mode where your body's just out of control, scared, paddling out, just going, oh my God, like I'm going to get killed out here.
And you got through the shore, are you fine? So you because you normally
still
have to run
pain.
and like scoot, Yeah,
I still managed to just time it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as soon as the hooter went, I don't remember any pain whatsoever.
Oh, it's so amazing.
Just adrenaline. And that's why I know I keep saying the same story again and again, but that's why I still to this day can understand why people can pick a car off someone.
Yeah.
Because adrenaline is just crazy. And then I'm thinking, now I know why those lunatics that like this stuff I wouldn't do, like skiing off cliffs.
Yeah.
Their adrenaline is like kind of blocking their everything else.
I have to ask, do you credit your experience with Iboga with winning that title at all? Can you talk us through it a little bit and what the connection is?
So Iboga is an African plant, and what happened was I had an amazing story. I went to this place called Gabon in West Africa, and they still have tribes there, and I got invited by a friend of a friend to go to this tribal dance, and it's not normally for tourists. It's really all about, just doing ceremonies. And it was only probably 5 or 10 years before I went to this ceremony that they used to always do a man's ceremony separate and a woman's separate. But when I came, it was together. And I was actually really nervous going there because when I was in Africa the first time, this guy came out of the jungle, and the guy was like so scared because he said that his son had kidnapped him and the son's friend, and he was going to get eaten. And we're like, who was going to eat you? And apparently like that still happens over there within some of the communities, like the kings and queens that, they eat your body parts or whatever. So whoa. I'm like, because by the time it was translated, it went from Gabonese to French to English. I'm like, well, whoa, was this true? And then a few months later, Nadej's dog we found it dead without its head, and they said that some queen had died nearby, and they like to bury a dog and a human with them, for their afterlife. So anyway, I don't know if that happens all the time, but this is in the back of my head when I'm going to this tribal thing. And when I first get there, we have to collect water, and we go back, and I kid you not, just like in the movies, they got this gigantic pot, and I'm thinking, are they going to kill us in
cook you up in the pot?
But they just warmed up the water for us, And me and Nadej had to go to this little concrete shower area, and there's a pot of boiling hot water and a pot of cold water, and we're like thinking how we're supposed to shower. So anyway, we figured out to just kind of pour it into each bucket and then manage to wash. And then I'm like, all this is just in my head again, just going, oh, like they want us clean before they eat us and stuff like that.
Scrubbing the potatoes, eh? All acid.
I still don't know how true that is, but when I saw that guy come out of the bushes and that's the story he told, I was freaked out by being there. Anyway, the ceremony went on. No, sorry. So then we had to have this ibuga. And what ibuga does is it actually highlights whatever mood that you're in. And so because I was nervous and happy, I was just like really like, they gave me this little rice shaker and I'm just there shaking away this rice.
Is it kind of a psychedelic?
Totally, if you have too much.
Yeah.
But because I only had a small amount, I just felt that bit hyper. And it was amazing. Like the guys would dance for a while and the women would dance. And they're dancing with flames and stuff. And so the chief came up to me and started doing this crazy dance. And he'd actually had a plate of this stuff because his eyes were popping out of his head. And he starts throwing the flame like near my nose and around my face. And I'm just like going, oh no, like is he going to do something now? And then he stops. And I don't know how he marked, but because he had the flame, but he marked some like coal on my body in quite a few different spots. And then he grabbed my hand in front of his face and he goes right up to my face, like sniffs up my arm and then just runs off and then dances around like crazy again. And I just like was laughing like crazy but nervous. And then he did the same to Nadej, but he held, like nearly burnt her nose. He held the flame a lot longer and put marks on her totally different spots. And then he also did the cameraman as well. And so we were the only 3 visitors. There was a cameraman and us 2. And then at the end of the night as a gift, so we'd gone in there at midnight, and actually I forgot to say the whole story of we actually ate dinner with loads of different foods, which I have no idea, but they eat every kind of animal and every potato and everything.
And you were there with a documentary film production that wasn't related to what you were doing. You were just tagging along.
So the only reason we even got to go is this French lady was actually part of that tribe. She's a white French lady, but she grew up in Gabon. So she was actually part of the tribe. And she knew him through her French connection side. And as a gift, she let him come and film, and because they needed actually some money to do some work, which they don't really normally need money. But she asked us for their blessing just to have 2 friends come, and we were the friends. And that's why I say normally outsiders don't get to go to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, after we did all the dancing and he did the 3 of us, he said our fortunes as well of like the future and the past. And he said, with mine, he said, oh, your dad rode motorbikes or something like that. And he said, you do a dangerous sport, but you're going to be number 1 this year as long as you feed the tree, like go to the biggest tree. So I had to get this translated from Gabonese to French to English as well. Go to the biggest tree and feed it whatever you're eating and drinking. I'll just quickly finish the last bit of the night. So at the end of the night, it ended really scary by what had happened is to make a boy a man. This is a tradition that they have still there. They lock someone in a cage all night, a young boy, and they've given him a plate of the ibuga. And when he comes out of that cage, he has to put on, like you'd see in the movies, like big straw going down to the floor with a scary mask. So this kid's walking around with this on. So I'm not sure what they call, if it's 16 or 18. And every woman and child has to be under cover because for them to prove they're a man, only the men are allowed outside, and they're allowed to beat or kill a woman or child if they disobey what those rules are. And then Nadej thought it was really funny to yell out, oh, you dickhead or something like that. And next thing you know, I was under the table with everyone else because they're all screaming and running under the table because you're not allowed to disrespect them. And Nadej just thought it would be funny to do that. And so I wasn't even it was no English. So I just ran under the table with them going, what's going on? By the way, since I arrived there, so from, I think it was like 8 o'clock at night till nearly 8 the next morning, I hadn't done a wee. I was hanging on that whole time. I was too scared to go anywhere. And this happened with this guy roaming around, and I said to my friend, oh, I've got a wee. And then I said to her, is it okay? Like, is that still classified under? And she said, I'm not sure, but just try not to let him see you go there. So I had to run and do a wee and then come back. Anyway, when I hopped back in the car and we drove back, it was a 3-hour drive through the thick jungle to get there and go back. I laughed for like 3 hours because it was just like, oh, I was all right. And like, half of it was probably in my head, but just the whole experience. And I'll shoot you guys over some pictures later of, I've got a couple of little videos here and there. It's just crazy how they were dressed and how it all was.
Did you find the tree?
So a couple of times while I was on the tour, I'd found the tree, or when I remembered to do it, I won every time. So one of them was in Brazil, and then I went to another one I remember in Santa Cruz, and another one in Hawaii. Actually, the one in Hawaii was quite funny because I put even their little statue that I was given, and it was called Mummy Water. It's like mother of the water, and I ran around that tree 3 times naked. Just to like give it a bit of extra. And then another guy had this chant. I'm not sure what it is, Nam Yo Ho Rangye Kyo, what the heritage is behind that. But I mixed all these things that I knew together to like really up it. And Haleiwa was crap for days and days and days. And that day was the last day of the waiting period. The next morning, I was 6 foot and perfect and ended up winning.
Oh, wow.
And then another time, Sam Cornish was with me and I was at the same tree. This was in Santa Cruz. And I was laughing with her, telling her about the whole African story and how I fed that tree. And then I kept talking to my friend and didn't even think about it. And I was actually eating some Japanese and just kept talking to my friend. And then Sam went off and fed the tree and she won the event.
Oh, wow.
How weird's that?
That's fantastic.
How do you make sense of that
I
magic?
know, I was just like that. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I can't believe I should have just done it because... part of me just is blown away when I think back, wow, I really did win each time. And then I'm like, why didn't I just do it all the time?
Wow. Do you have an explanation when you think of that experience and any other
positive
times in your life?
thought, the power of positive thought too, and just, But the Ibuga, I only got to try it again when I was in France and I did see that lady again. And I had that tiny little bit too much and I wasn't enjoying it because I don't really like taking drugs or anything like that. And I remember she forgot to actually say it was a bit stronger. So normally you have like half a teaspoon and I had a bit more. And I'll never forget, I was walking up the stairs. Actually, I went to walk back to my friend's house and I was a little bit going, oh, how do I get back to the house? It's a bit weird, like I just got lost on the street. And then as I was walking up the stairs, I just said, oh, no, wait, like in my brain. And then that kept going, no way, no way, no way. And then I'd say things which just still sticks to my head, in my head too. I'd say, Rob Machado, and then it would go, Rob Machado, Rob Machado, Rob Machado. Then I went, Kelly Slater, and I was like, whoa, this is weird. Especially that was weird that the guys' names came into my head as
totally.
well. And then I said, I think I was with Prue Jeffries at the time. I said to Prue, because she had some with me, and we did it the traditional way as well. And she said she was fine. So I just had that tiny bit too much. But it made me think to that young kid and the chief, like, how out of it they must have been if I still had such a small amount and it wasn't just tiny.
I really loved the rant you included from your coach, Steve, in the early 90s. He wrote, quote, Steve launches into a long rant about he fears surfing losing its integrity in the modern age. He rails about the beachwear-driven surge of money that's sweeping through the sport. He talks of his growing unease about surfing's commercial evolution from grassroots sport to billion-dollar industry. How do you reflect on where the surf industry is now compared to that moment in the 90s?
It's better in one sense for the women, but it's worse for the whole, like, surfing in general. It's just become so commercial. I'm quite disappointed how the WSL has gone. Like, it's so commercial that they're worried about the commercial side instead of the surfers. So, like, if you talk to the surfers in general, the way even the events run and the way they have the final 5, I find that really disappointing as a sport. And just to know where they're finishing somewhere like Trestles when they could finish somewhere like Pipe or Sunset, it's like, this doesn't make sense to me. The other thing that's really sad now is that you've got these big companies that have bought all those companies, the smaller companies, and now they're buying them all. And I heard just recently there's been a massive change where they're just basically dropping loads of people. And so the new generation, if they want Australia to do well, they've got to support the new generation. It's kind of going back to the way it was. So apparently a lot of the amateur kids are not getting the money they need. Yeah, it's like we all need to go back to, what they say, buy local. Everyone needs to start doing that again and just go with these small companies and just totally get rid of all these big companies, I reckon.
Yeah, it seems like they're getting rid of themselves at this point in time too. They're just imploding.
Yeah.
And what will grow out of it will be interesting. I feel like your book, it's a story that surfing really needs right now. Like
Yeah.
really needs right now. Like you were saying, Lauren, about, just women's surfing timeline being cut so many times, and just the ability of your story to take us back to that period in time.
And I hope it will like put a fire under their in their belly, because privately I actually am still messaging some of the top girls going, oh God, you got to fight for that, or say something about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're all too scared because they're all under contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they there's one or two of them that will give me the dirt, but a lot of the others won't.
There's a lot to lose now, isn't there? There's a lot of money to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the contribution is going to be great, and it's going to be great to see what comes from that kind of prod that I think your book is going to give to the surfing organism. It just feels like, I really feel like it will fire people up, and especially young women who are coming into this organism and going, wow, all right, I'm not going to take any shit.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, can you tell us about the bush pig? I feel like that's a great symbol for this whole conversation.
Funny. So that actually came originally from a friend called Kath Ryan. She was at the World Amateur Titles with me as well. But basically, when they were kids, or mainly in Queensland, that's what you kind of called your friends, like an endearing name, was my little bushy, like the bush pigs. And so it was really funny that became, all my friends were like, little bushy, how you going, bush pig? And then it did get turned around, like in some of the media, the wrong way, like thinking that we were being mean, or they're being mean calling me a bush pig, but it was meant in an endearing way. But because I said it as a joke, sometimes it just started to really, like everyone kept buying me pigs. I kept getting pig presents, and I've still got today, Michelle Donahue bought me a pair of these pig pants, and they're like from Bali, and it's got girls surfing pigs on it. And then I had those pigs copied onto a surfboard, and so I had all these pigs on the surfboard that I used in Hawaii. The artist was making a joke and made one of them look like me. So he put freckles on it and black hair, black long hair.
But I feel like it was kind of a symbol of you just going, women surfing is going in this direction. Lisa Anderson's part of the culture. Her look, the look of the stereotypical beach babe, blue-eyed, tan, blonde-headed, the whole thing.
It was even like that in the beginning. From the beginning, when Wendy was getting so much attention.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many heats. Not trying to take it away from her, but it was just how it was. There were so many heats that were close that it would always be Wendy that got it. It's like never was the other way around, and it was like starting to get old.
That's an enlightening part of your book, too. You write about how the surfers who are, and it makes perfect sense, it's totally logical, the surfers who are sponsored by the same brands who are sponsoring the event get preferenced.
Yeah.
Because there's an incentive for the judges to let the sponsor win,
Totally.
so they keep sponsoring the events. Like, it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, and we had to fight. Like, Renato, Hickel, and Lisa had a child together. Lisa's the world champion.
Can you tell me about...
And we had to fight to get him to stand down when the women were on. And the thing I didn't like about him still being there at all, like, you don't want him to lose his job, but he was still their boss. He was still the judge's boss, and they had a baby together, and it's like... Just things like that just shouldn't have happened, and it did, and they allowed it to happen. And so there was a lot of stuff like that happened, though, and it was like, even when the judges rocked up, they would get so many clothes from, like, Roxy or Billabong or whoever when they rocked up, and it's like, how do you keep that from not being favoritising their surfer?
Yeah.
I wonder if that part of the surfing tree right now is the pendulum of the contest world is swinging back to the center of things, perhaps, because when you talk about that era, it was pretty much like just a rolling party atmosphere a lot of the time. Everyone was, when I saw it anyway as a young kid, it just seemed like it was a rager. It was pretty loose. It was haphazard, slapped together, just scraping by. Old matey Greville Mitchell came in at some point as the sole person who saved surfing, kept it afloat in the late 90s into 2000s. Like, it was kind of hanging on by a thread. And then when we see where it's been with the ASB to the WSL for the last however many years. It's like it's trying so hard to be a clean, organised corporate beast coming from the American football industry and all of that with that previous guy who was running the WSL. Maybe there is going to be a time some point soon where it comes back to the middle and isn't just this whatever it is now, but it's not this very loose slap together thing that it used to be where shit like that could go down. Do you, when you look forward in time and think about where it's all going, how do you feel about the potential future of that part of surfing?
Well, it's hard to know, like, is the WSL doing okay? Are they, you know what I mean? Like, are they putting too much in or doing it the wrong way? Will they lose? So it's like, I think they can get so big and it erupts and sort of goes back to the beginning again. But if they keep staying the way they are, I see it crashing.
You do?
Yeah, I do. Because I don't remember ever seeing so much angst or so much hatred against it. And, you know, I know we didn't have the online stuff, but everyone's complaining. You know, just everywhere. And it's like, you know, their surfers, of course, aren't allowed to complain because they just can't. They're all under contract. But there's a lot of people there that aren't happy, and then they're starting to move more with the wave pools, and it's like, as a spectator, we don't want to watch that. It's so boring. Wave after wave, the same. Like, I normally watch 3 hours of the wave pool and then have no desire to watch anymore. And then with all the other events, I'm like glued to it, just want to watch.
That's great.
You know?
Yeah,
it's hard to know.
Yeah, and then moving away from, say, that competition branch of the surfing tree, like, what is surfing to you now? Since you won your world title and you stepped away from that part of the surfing experience for you, like, how does it fit into your life now, and what's your perspective on surfing personally?
So since the movie, anyway, my perspective... Girls Can't Surf, is to inspire others. And, like, just the amount of messages I got after that made me just want to keep inspiring. And, like, you know, doing a book, it's not, you don't make millions out of doing a book, but I did it purely because I wanted to share my story, and not just for surfers, but people with autoimmune and gay people as well. I wanted just to be truthful and show the true stories of what you go through and how you can overcome it or still keep going. And so now I'm quite happy just to have a fun surf and cruise, and, like, I'll do the breast comp ever, which is about breast cancer and saving, like, enough money for around here for new machines to help women who need to get treatment so they don't have to go all the way to Brisbane. It also went to the National Foundation as well. And so I do things like that with, I'm sponsored by No Pong deodorant and Huey's Choice wax. They always give me product for anything I ask, like, so they're really supportive. And then if I want to go to, like, a sports award or something like that, they're just always throwing me some money for that. So I just enjoy doing community stuff, like just giving back. You know, I think Steve was a big reason for that as well, is, you know, just even going to the para surfing event. It's just nice to give back because we need to. There's always those sponsored people, but there's always those other ones down below that need a helping hand or need some inspiration. And so I just love doing that when I can.
Do you find that the culture is more open to diversity now, to surfers being out, for example? Has it changed much in your experience, or is there still a long way to go?
I think there's still a long way to go. Like, I think, you know, a lot of the companies are kind of jumping on board to show that they're inclusive, but they're not doing it the right way. Like, that whole Sasha Jane thing, I thought was quite horrible because Sasha wasn't even competing and it was just an ad about...
You're talking about Rip Curl releasing a web clip and then they retracted the web clip. Yeah, and then they
retracted it. And so I was really disappointed that they took that down because it was about just surfers. It was nothing to do with competition, and everyone just brought all that into it and, you know, blows it out of proportion. And if people actually do their proper statistics and look into it, it's just different in every sport. And even all the longboarders as well weren't against it. Like, anyone that was longboarding.
Having Sasha Jane Lowerson compete in the women's division.
Yeah, so all the ones I've talked to were fine about it anyway. So I just thought it was nasty the way that whole thing happened, and I didn't think they should have pulled out. And I think it's good that, you know, like, Tyler has been able to put whatever flag, or people can put whatever flag they want, and she's been able to do that.
Yeah, put the progressive pride flag on her jersey.
But I don't think without Tyler doing that and her mainly being advertised, I don't think it's that much further than that in the industry. Like, not that I've noticed.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I find nice now is that, you know, I lived in fear my whole surfing career, and for like getting injured and all that now. And I don't know if it's just this area, but I just find everyone I talk to and everyone I see now, no one gives a stuff about your sexuality. And I still kind of almost not used to that. Like I was for so long just never told anyone. And then even my neighbour who I've lived next to, and it was my mum's house before mine, I told her that me and Sam were engaged quite a few years ago now, but I was so scared to tell her, and she goes, "Oh, why didn't you tell me that you two were together?" And I went, "I don't know, I was just a bit scared." She goes, "What were you scared for?" And then you have to tell them why you're scared, because people got murdered around me or beaten up. And so yeah.
On that note, can you speak to the impact of Jodie Cooper on you? Because she was really one of the pioneers of being out and not hiding it on the women's tour.
Totally. So Jodie had sponsors at the time, like while I was still travelling with her. And so because it was very anti, like you heard it every day. Like because I was never out, every day people would go, "Oh, what a waste, Jodie, what a waste. And that lesbian, blah, blah, blah. Don't hang out with lesbians. You'll become a lesbian." It was just never ending. It was everyday life was never ending sexuality. And then when Jodie just put it out there, and she I think she was in a magazine called Black and White, if I'm remembering right, and she came out properly in that. I just totally looked up to her, and I just thought it was so awesome, because I was still so worried about having no sponsors, and so that's the only reason I kept quiet, and safety wise as well. But Jodie was my hero for coming out. In a way, I kind of felt like she came out for me, and I'm sure a lot of people still feel that today. And again, that's why in the book I'm very open about my journey and where I went and what happened, because I don't want other people to be scared.
Yeah.
And like people should understand, like, you know, it's like saying to you, why don't you just go with a man? Like if you don't feel like that and you're really uncomfortable, why say something different and make you do something different?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't explain this properly before, but the bush pig for me, when you started putting those decals on your board, it really symbolized you not playing the game anymore. You weren't going to hide who you were to the extent that you had to before.
You're right about that. Like I remember, I'm not going to name companies, but one of the companies did say to Steve, and I actually asked Steve, he doesn't remember, but I still do. He was talking to someone from a company, and they said to him, "Pauline doesn't have the look that we want." And so that's when I laughed as well and put the pig on there.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then I went through that whole time as well of going, okay, you want a blonde one?
right.
I'm going to do blonde. And then you want someone to stand out? Okay, I'm going to do a blue mohawk. Oh, we're in Huntington Beach now. I'm going to put glitter all over my face as well. And then I end up winning the event. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I love that aspect of you, that larrikinism laugh, like what else are you going to do? You're either going to cry or you're going to laugh, and your route of choosing that humorous take, that humorous response.
And, I think
admirable.
that too came from being unwell a lot. So because I was unwell and you're sitting around doing nothing, and then all of a sudden you're around people and you can make people laugh. And so like deep down all I wanted was people to make me laugh when I was unwell. And so when I was well and I could make people laugh, I loved it.
That's great.
And so I liked sort of shocking people, but I'd shock them to make them laugh.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little bit too naughty, but I kind of like the shock value and the laugh.
Totally.
And so, yeah, that did become a big part of me.
That was a thread, sorry, I just wanted to tap into this. That's a thread through the book that I was noticing, that entertainer aspect of your story with surfing. And Steve mentions it in one of the pieces where you're doing some training. He talks about, that it's essentially entertainment. You're entertaining the crowd and the judges and everything. And that, it just seems to run through your story. And it makes me think about like where you grew up, and how a lot of us are really fashioned by the waves we surf when we grow up and the culture around those
Definitely.
waves. And Bondi is like an amphitheatre.
Totally.
All faces straight down to that beach, and everyone's picking everyone apart by the sound of things, like all the Weber brothers and all the other surf rats in that zone, looking at everyone's every move. Has it always been like that for you? Like you feel like, well, I'm sure it doesn't feel like that when you're surfing alone at South Golden Beach or Bruns and there's no one around. But during the height of all that time in your life, do you feel like you were always being watched and you kind of liked it?
I absolutely did, 100%. Like I actually, it's funny you said that, because only yesterday when I was at the board event, I was talking to Oceana, and she's, one of the younger girl surfers. And I just kept saying to her, you just got to show off. The biggest show off is the best surfer. And she goes, I get really nervous. I said, don't get nervous. Just go out there and show off. And I said, that's how you get over your nerves, is just to want to do the biggest turn. And I remember at Bondi, like there was so many people watching and you got everyone on the beach. Like even the guys when they were paddling out, I used to try and just do a biggest snap right on their head. And so for me, it definitely did. And then the crazy entertainment thing of like kind of having no cut-off switch is from ITN. Like that was pretty crazy. And so everyone was always like doing something naughty or naked or outrageous.
What's that? What's ITN?
In the nude, that's what Bondi board riders used to be called.
Okay.
Was ITN.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of crazy stuff. And it was a bit too crazy, especially being a young girl around that kind of stuff. But, you know, you're open to lots of things. And so when you're growing up and seeing that, you don't think too much of it later. Like, well, they did it, you know.
Totally, yeah. What's a blue
And then
mohawk?
later on you realise, you know, people are going, well, Pauline's out of control.
You're just actually a standard Bondi surf rat.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love now that I've reconnected with the Bondi crew. I actually had a little bit of a tear because we were talking about Gunter Kitzler passed away and we were having a little memorial for him. And I said to Vicky, who's the head of the Bondi board riders now, I said, I had a little tear at the thing the other day at the wake because I just remember I went down to Bondi and we were talking and I had a surf, like I got to surf in the girls' heats and I actually went against the guys as well. And then when I left the beach, you announced to everyone, Pauline's leaving, can you give her a round of applause? She's our queen or something like that. And as I was walking out of the contest area, I was like crying but trying to hide it, just like so happy, going, oh my God, like finally got this respect.
Yeah, is that how it felt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry again.
Respect.
So
Me
beautiful.
too.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
And then I was telling her that yesterday and I go, oh, it's so nice to finally get this recognition and like people liking you. And she goes, oh my God, Bondi loves you.
how could they not?
Yeah.
How could they not? A few years ago, a surf industry veteran, Sophie Marshall, helped set up a GoFundMe to try and get you your hard-earned prize money that you were given. $0 for winning the world title. It ultimately raised $60K from more than 1,000 people who donated. What was that experience like, Pauline, and how did you ultimately spend the money?
Oh, that was amazing. I remember, I think it was the first few days. It was going up relatively quick. But I think it was the third day. I couldn't believe it. It went up to 25,000. It just like went ballistic at one point. And then Sophie's going, oh, it's going to go over the amount. What do you want to do? And I said, oh, let's donate the rest. And so she said, well, can you pick some things that you would like to donate to? And I'm always been, you know, big for helping the disabled surfers. So a big amount went to them. And then I also said to give it to a family in the Philippines who has a rare autoimmune disease that I've got. So they got a big chunk. And then another autoimmune disease charity. And so I never expected it to get so high. And then I was actually really stoked that this money not only has helped me and it's helped others. And we made sure that once it got to 25,000, we told them that it was going to other people, and people still kept giving. And so, you know, it's probably a bit easier to give it away when it doesn't go in your bank account. But I just felt like, you know, because of that movie again, like not only has it helped me, it's helped, you know, all these people with disabilities that again are people that don't get helped. And so it was just absolutely awesome. And, you know, now I've got a lifetime friend of Sophie, and then, you know, I ended up getting quite a lot of clothes from Rip Curl, so that was nice to go shopping and get whatever you wanted. But, yeah, it was just really, really cool. Finally get what I deserve from back then.
When you won your world title, you called Steve and he said, quote, "You are a bloody warrior. You've battled from bottom to the top. You're a disabled athlete who's won a world title in an able-bodied sport." Oh, that hit me right in the heart when I read that. How did that land for you at the moment? And did that feel true?
Totally. Like, you know, that was probably one of the first times I heard it explained, like, you're a disabled person, you know, being able to do in a normal sports, normal people's bodies sport and be a world champion at it. I didn't actually think about it like that. I just thought, oh, I'm like tough and just push through. But then I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I was totally crippled up and still managed to win. And, you know, that was not just going for the world title. Most of my career, there was always some points of having my arthritis come back with a big flare and losing lots of events because I was too crippled up. And that's why I believe I would have won more world titles if I had, you know, the proper nutrition and all the things to help with my arthritis. I would have been able to keep it under control more.
Thanks for listening with us today. If you liked what you heard, please consider sharing an episode with a friend. Our editor this season is the multi-talented, absolute legend, Ben Jake Alexander. The soundtrack was composed by Shannon Sol Carroll, with additional tunes from the very talented Kai McGilvray. We have a few new Water People experiments this season. You can find every episode of the podcast on our Water People YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to our very infrequent newsletter and get book recommendations, questions we're pondering, and behind-the-scenes glimpses into recording the podcast, and more, via our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com. As usual, we'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast.